Okay, so you want to buy a movie studio, hire famous actors, release blockbusters, collect the box office? Simple. Except here's the strange part. The movie itself might be the worst business inside the movie business. The real money is not in the ticket. It is in everything that happens after the ticket is sold. First, let's get rid of the fantasy. A movie studio is not a building with cameras, sound stages, and people yelling action. You can rent those. You can lease a soundstage in Atlanta, shoot in Budapest, finish the visual effects in Vancouver, and never own a single acre of Hollywood. What you are actually buying is less visible. Rights, financing capacity, distribution relationships, release calendars, talent access, and a library of stories that can keep earning money long after everyone forgets opening weekend. At the small end, you can start like an independent production company, raise $5 to $10 million, make one controlled budget film, sell distribution rights territory by territory, and hope the movie does not die on Friday night. At the middle end, you need hundreds of millions because now you are not making a movie. You are building a slate, 5 films, 10 films, enough shots on goal that one success can pay for the ones that disappear. And at the top, the major studio level, you are not really buying films anymore. You are buying a factory for intellectual property. That is why Disney can treat one character as a theatrical release, a streaming title, a toy, a stage show, a song catalog, a theme park attraction, and a licensing machine. That is why a studio library can be talked about like an oil field. And that is why companies like Warner Brothers. Discovery described their studio business across theaters, television, licensing, streaming, home entertainment, games, consumer products, themed experiences, and character licensing. The movie is only the first receipt. Now we get to the question that actually matters. Where does the money come from? Most people will say box office, and that is the beginner version. A movie makes $500 million worldwide, the headlines call it a hit, and everyone assumes the studio is rich. Unfortunately, no. Box office is gross. It is not profit. The theater keeps a cut, the distributor keeps a cut. The studio has already spent the production budget, then usually spend another giant pile of money making sure the entire planet knows the movie exists. A $200 million blockbuster can easily need another $100 million in marketing before the first ticket is sold. Then the ticket itself is split. In the United States, studios and theaters have traditionally divided ticket proceeds roughly evenly. Although a powerful studio with a must-have blockbuster can take more. So your $500 million headline is not $500 million in the studio's bank account. Maybe half comes back from theaters, less from some foreign markets. Then marketing comes off, then interest, then overhead, then participations, then the people with better lawyers than you get paid. This is where Hollywood accounting begins. Imagine your movie grosses $500 million. The audience sees a hit, the newspaper sees a hit, your mother sees a hit. Inside the studio, the movie is not a hit. It is a temporary company with expenses stacked against it. Distribution fee, advertising fee, overhead allocation, interest, residuals, talent participation, internal charges. Suddenly, the hit has no net profit. This is not just theory. Forrest Gump became one of the most famous examples. The film was a cultural phenomenon, won Best Picture, turned Tom Hanks into a myth, and still produced disputes over whether there were net profits to share. Winston Groom, who wrote the novel, had a deal tied to net profits. The movie looked like a historic success to everyone outside the accounting department. On paper, the studio could still show the kind of loss that makes a net profit participant wonder whether the word profit means anything at all. That is why smart actors do not ask for net points if they can get gross points. Net profit in Hollywood is not a number. It is a negotiation wearing a calculator. But theatrical release still matters because it sets the price for everything else. Theater is the billboard you charge people to watch. If the movie opens big, every later buyer pays more. Premium video on demand pays more. Streaming pays more. Airlines pay more. Foreign television pays more. Even the digital rental on a Tuesday night pays more because the film has already been stamped into public memory. Opening weekend is not just revenue, it is an advertisement for the next 10 years of revenue. And that is the second business, windows. A normal product is sold once. A movie is sold over and over in different rooms. First the theater, then premium digital rental, then ordinary rental, then subscription streaming, then cable, then free television, then international packages, then library bundles, then anniversary releases, then remasters, then the same character returns in a sequel and wakes up the old film again. This is why a studio cares about a library. A library is not nostalgia. It is inventory that does not rot. A studio can license an old movie to one streamer this year, a cable network next year, an airline package after that, and then re-release it when the franchise becomes fashionable again. The audience calls it childhood. The owner calls it recurring revenue. The best studio asset is not a movie. It is a story that can survive being sold in 10 different forms. Look at the difference between a one-time drama and a franchise. The drama has to be perfect. The script, the star, the reviews, the release date, the awards campaign. Everything has to work once. A franchise does not need perfection every time. It needs familiarity. The audience already knows the character. Marketing is cheaper per dollar of awareness. Retailers understand the merchandise. Streaming platforms understand the audience. International buyers understand the brand. A franchise walks into the room with credit history. That is why Hollywood keeps remaking the same thing. Not because everyone forgot how to write, because new ideas are expensive to explain. Old ideas arrive pre-sold. Now, the costs. A movie studio burns money before it knows whether anyone cares. Development comes first, scripts are bought and rewritten, producers are attached, directors leave, actors become unavailable, projects die quietly in folders after millions have already been spent. Then production starts and every day is a cash fire. Hundreds of crew members, equipment, sets, locations, insurance, hotels, overtime, visual effects, music, legal, security, weather delays. A single shutdown can cost more than a normal business spends in a year. Then comes marketing, the part outsiders forget. A studio does not just make the movie, it buys attention. Trailers, posters, billboards, premieres, interviews, festival campaigns, social media, global publicity, brand partnerships, and enough online ads to make you feel like the movie is following you home. In this business, making a film nobody knows about is the same as not making it. And after all of that, the studio still has no guarantee. The movie business is brutal because hits are not evenly distributed. A few films carry the year. Many do nothing. Some die so completely that the studio stops mentioning them by Monday morning. This is why a real studio thinks in portfolios. One horror movie made for $15 million can save a quarter. One superhero disaster can erase 3 good mid-budget films. One animated franchise can pay salaries for people who will never touch animation. A small studio is gambling on one card. A big studio owns the deck. But even big studios can lose. The first way is simple. Spend like every movie is the next billion-dollar franchise. This is how you turn filmmaking into a debt machine. The second way is worse. Misunderstand what business you are in. You think you are selling cinema. Actually, you are selling attention, rights, and repeatable worlds. If the audience does not want to return to your world, you do not own a franchise. You own an expensive costume warehouse. The third risk is the one that changed the industry, streaming. For a while, streaming looked like free money. Studios could put their own movies on their own platforms and keep the customer relationship. No theater split, no cable middleman, no shelf space, just subscribers. But then the math changed. Streaming needed constant content. Constant content needed constant spending. And unlike a movie ticket, a subscriber does not tell you exactly which film made them pay this month. Suddenly, the studio had a new problem. How do you value a movie when the revenue is hidden inside a subscription? That is why residuals and artificial intelligence became strike issues. Actors understood that if the studio no longer sells one ticket at a time, the old payment system breaks. Writers understood the same thing. If the product is not just a movie, but a digital asset that can be streamed, clipped, reused, translated, trained on, replicated, and monetized globally, then the question is no longer only who gets paid for the first performance. It is who gets paid every time the machine finds a new way to use the work. And this brings us to the hidden product of the whole industry: control. A studio wants to control the rights, control the release date, control the marketing, control the window, control the sequel, control the spin-off, control the data, control the library. If you only finance a movie and someone else controls distribution, you are not the studio. You are the person paying for the privilege of hoping the studio sends you a check. So, how much money do you make if you do this right? Scenario 1, the independent studio. You raise $10 million, make one disciplined thriller or horror film, sell domestic distribution, pre-sell foreign territories, use tax credits to lower the real cost, and keep the budget under control. If the movie works, the $10 million can turn into $20 million to $30 million across all windows. Real profit after fees and investors might be $3 million to $8 million. Good business. Terrible business if the movie misses, because one miss can take the whole company with it. Scenario 2, the mid-sized studio. You have $300 million of capital and a slate of 10 films. A few fail, several break even, one becomes a breakout. Now the math gets better. Not because you got smarter, but because the portfolio finally has enough attempts for luck to matter less. Annual revenue might run a few hundred million. Profit could be $30 million to $60 million in a good year. But one over-budget disaster, one lawsuit, or one frozen distribution market can turn that into nothing. Scenario 3, the major studio. At this level, you are not buying a movie business, you are buying a rights empire. Theatrical releases feed streaming. Streaming feeds franchises. Franchises feed merchandise. Merchandise feeds theme parks. Theme parks feed nostalgia. Nostalgia feeds the next theatrical release. The money moves in circles. A single film can be the least profitable part of the machine and still be the reason the machine works. At this point, the business is clear. A movie studio is not a company that makes movies. It is a financial machine that turns attention into intellectual property into rights, and rights into repeated revenue. The audience sees 2 hours of entertainment. The owner sees a contract that can be sold for decades. So if you do decide to buy a movie studio, remember the most important rule of this business. The movie is not the asset. The rights are the asset. The movie just teaches the world to care.